Story 1. The Ghost House Enigma. In the heart of a decaying suburban sprawl, where the streets were lined with neglected homes and the air carried the faint tang of forgotten dreams, stood a structure known only as the Ghost House. Its skeletal frame loomed over a block shrouded in perpetual twilight, where streetlights flickered weakly and the shadows seemed to writhe with secrets. The house, half-built and abandoned for over a decade, was a monument to failure, its exposed beams and shattered windows whispering tales of halted ambitions. Local legend claimed it was cursed, its construction plagued by mysterious accidents and unexplained disappearances. Yet for a group of restless teenagers, myself, Jenny, Luca, and Kylie, it was an irresistible lure, a challenge to our boredom and a gateway to adventure. It was a moonless night, the kind where the darkness felt alive, pressing against our skin as we cruised through the desolate streets. We'd grabbed greasy burgers from a 24-hour drive-thru, the scent of fries lingering in Luca's beat-up sedan. The conversation had dwindled, and the silence was heavy with the weight of a long, aimless summer. That's when Luca, his eyes glinting with mischief, suggested we explore the ghost house. Not just drive by, but go inside. The idea sparked like a match in dry grass. Jenny and Kylie, always up for a thrill, agreed instantly, their laughter tinged with nervous excitement. I felt a prickle of unease but pushed it down. Peer pressure and curiosity were stronger than fear. We parked several houses down, the street's single streetlight casting a sickly yellow glow that barely reached the pavement. The neighboring homes were dark, their overgrown lawns and sagging porches suggesting abandonment, though the occasional car in a driveway hinted at unseen occupants. We moved like thieves, our footsteps muffled, our breaths shallow. The ghost house loomed ahead, its jagged silhouette cutting into the starry sky. Up close, it was even more imposing, its unfinished walls streaked with mildew, its windows like empty eye sockets. The air around it was thick, almost suffocating, as if the house itself exhaled a warning. The front door was predictably locked, its rusted knob unyielding. We circled the house, testing windows, our flashlights slicing through the gloom. One window, low and unboarded, gave way with a groan, and Jenny, the smallest of us, volunteered to climb through. She disappeared into the darkness, her muffled footsteps echoing inside. Moments later, the back door creaked open, revealing her pale face. "It was already unlocked," she whispered, her voice trembling. The realization hit us like a cold wave. Anyone could have walked in before us. Stepping inside was like crossing a threshold into another world. The air was heavy with the stench of damp wood and something fouler, a rancid odor that clung to the back of our throats. The first floor was surprisingly intact, its rooms sprawling and empty, devoid of furniture but littered with debris. Broken glass, crumpled beer cans, and the occasional syringe. We split up, our curiosity outweighing our caution. Jenny and Kylie wandered toward the kitchen, while Luca poked around what might have been a living room. I headed for the stairs, drawn to the second floor by an inexplicable pull. The staircase groaned under my weight, each step echoing in the cavernous silence. Upstairs, the house felt raw, unfinished. Exposed beams and insulation hung like entrails, and the walls were mere skeletons of wood. I moved cautiously, my flashlight beam dancing across the floor. A sudden rustling from downstairs made my heart lurch. My friends too loud, their laughter breaking the spell of silence. I hissed a warning, my voice sharper than intended, and turned back to explore further. That's when I found the door to the basement, tucked beneath the stairs like a secret waiting to be uncovered. It was plain, brown, unremarkable, yet it radiated a malevolence that made my skin crawl. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the knob, but curiosity won out. The door opened with a low moan, releasing a wave of that same foul odor, now stronger, like rotting meat mixed with ammonia. I descended the narrow stairs, each step amplifying the smell until it was nearly unbearable. The basement was a different beast. Its concrete floor was stained with dark, rusty patches that could have been paint or blood. The walls were damp, glistening in the flashlight's beam, and the air was thick with an oppressive stillness. In one corner, a small wooden chair sat beside a rickety table, and on the table lay a single object, a worn, leather-bound Bible. Its presence was jarring, out of place in this forsaken pit. I reached for it, my fingers brushing the cover, when footsteps echoed behind me. "Yo, come check this out," I called softly, expecting Jenny or Luca. Silence answered. I turned, my flashlight sweeping the stairs, but no one was there. My pulse quickened. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice cracking. That's when I saw her, a figure slumped against the far wall, barely illuminated. A woman, her hair long and matted, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity that froze my blood. She wasn't Jenny or Kylie. She was a stranger, her presence wrong, unnatural. Before I could react, a scream shattered the silence from upstairs, followed by Luca's voice, frantic and raw. "We gotta go!" The woman didn't move, but her gaze bore into me, unblinking. I bolted, my legs pumping as I raced up the stairs, the Bible forgotten. My friends were already at the back door, their faces pale, their eyes wide with terror. We didn't stop to explain, didn't pause to look back. We ran, our footsteps pounding the earth, until we reached the car. As we sped away, the story spilled out in chaotic fragments. Jenny and Kylie had seen two men in one of the first-floor rooms, their figures shrouded in shadow, standing over what looked like a pile of dark objects. Possibly bags, possibly something worse. They hadn't seen faces, only silhouettes. But the sight was enough to send them running. I told them about the woman in the basement, her eerie stillness, and the Bible that seemed to anchor the room's malevolence. We debated what we'd stumbled into, a squatter's den, a drug hideout, something far darker, like a cult ritual. The Bible, the stains, the figures. It all pointed to something sinister, something we were lucky to escape. Years later, I learned the ghost house was finally demolished, its lot left barren. But the memory lingers, a scar on my psyche. I don't know what lived in that house, but I know it wasn't human, not entirely, and I know I'll never set foot on that block again, no matter how many years pass. Story 2, The Cemetery Mansion's Curse. Our neighborhood was the epitome of suburban perfection, manicured lawns, towering oaks, and sprawling homes that screamed wealth and stability. It was the kind of place where nothing ever happened, where the silence was a comfort, a cocoon against the chaos of the outside world. But every paradise has its shadows, and ours was the cemetery mansion, a decaying relic perched atop a hill, its Gothic spires piercing the sky like the claws of some ancient beast. Abandoned for decades, it stood at the edge of a sprawling cemetery, its windows shattered, its walls defaced with graffiti. To the kids in town, it was a rite of passage, a place to test your courage. To me and my friend Chaz, it was our playground, our escape from the monotony of teenage life. Chaz and I were troublemakers, the kind of kids who thrived on rebellion. We'd grown up on the same street, our bond forged in countless afternoons of mischief, stealing road signs, sneaking beers, tagging walls. That summer we were restless, our usual haunts feeling stale. It was 3 a.m. on a humid Wednesday, the air thick with the scent of cut grass and impending rain. We'd been ditched by a couple of girls we'd planned to meet, and the sting of rejection fueled our recklessness. Drunk on cheap vodka and teenage bravado, we decided to head to the cemetery mansion, our default when plans fell through. Throwing rocks at its windows seemed like the perfect way to blow off steam. We walked, too inebriated to drive, our laughter echoing in the empty streets. The mansion came into view as we crested the hill, its silhouette both familiar and foreboding. Vines snaked across its brick facade, and the jagged remains of windows glinted in the moonlight. It was beautiful in its decay, but there was something sinister about it that night. A weight in the air that made my stomach twist. Chaz, oblivious, grabbed a rock and hurled it, the crash of glass ringing out like a gunshot. I followed suit, my rock smashing a second-floor window, the sound thrilling and dangerous. We took turns, our throws growing bolder, until Chaz pointed to a lone attic window, small and untouched, high above the rest. "Bet you can't hit that," he taunted. I tried, my rock sailing wide, my frustration mounting. Chaz, smirking, picked up a stone with a distinctive Z-shaped mark and launched it. The window shattered with a satisfying crack, and we froze, savoring the moment. But our triumph was short-lived. Something flew from the broken window, landing at our feet with a thud. It was the same rock, its Z-mark unmistakable. We stared, our buzz replaced by a creeping dread. "Someone's up there," Chaz whispered, his voice tight. We convinced ourselves it was other kids playing a prank, and our fear morphed into excitement. We'd turn the tables, sneak inside, and scare them first. The front door, perpetually ajar, creaked as we entered, the familiar stench of mildew and rot enveloping us. The mansion was a labyrinth of crumbling walls and graffiti, its floors littered with debris. We climbed the stairs, each creak amplifying our tension, until we reached the fourth floor. The attic staircase was narrow, its wooden steps warped and unsteady. We'd never ventured this far. The roof access was on the other side, and the attic had always seemed irrelevant. Now it felt like the heart of the house's darkness. Chaz led the way, his hand on the doorknob. He glanced back and I nodded, my heart pounding. He flung the door open, and a wave of stench hit us. Rotting flesh, decay, death. I staggered back, gagging, as Chaz covered his nose and stepped inside. The room was small, its floor painted with a stark white pentagram. Unlit candles encircled it, and a closed closet door loomed in the corner, the source of the smell. The air was thick, oppressive, as if the room itself resented our presence. There was no one there, no pranksters, no kids. Just the pentagram, the candles, and that door. I wanted to leave, my instincts screaming, but Chaz was transfixed, his eyes on the closet. Before he could move toward it, I saw them. Two cloaked figures at the base of the stairs, their faces hidden, their presence a violation of everything natural. I cursed, grabbing Chaz, but the sound of heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Panic seized us. Chaz bolted for the shattered window, climbing onto the roof, and I followed, my hands scraping against the jagged glass. The roof was a treacherous expanse, slick with moss and shrouded in darkness. Behind us, the attic door slammed open, the sound spurring us forward. We ran, our footsteps echoing, until we reached the roof hatch we knew led to a ladder. It was locked. A voice, deep and guttural, boomed from the darkness. "They went that way!" It was the sound of nightmares, a primal terror that rooted me to the spot. Desperation took over. I stomped on the hatch, my foot breaking through with a crash. I fell, my hands catching the ladder just in time, pain shooting through my leg. Chaz urged me down, and we sprinted through the mansion, bursting out the back door and into the cemetery. We hid behind a gravestone, our breaths ragged, our eyes fixed on the mansion. Minutes passed, and just as we thought we'd escaped, we saw them. 4 or 5 cloaked figures, moving like predators, searching the grounds. We crept deeper into the cemetery, the gravestones our only shield, until we reached the far fence and fled. We never returned, never spoke of it beyond hushed whispers. The mansion still stands, its secrets buried in that attic, and I'm certain we narrowly escaped something ancient, something evil. Story 3. The Haunted Hospital. In the fall of 2017, I was a college freshman, caught up in the whirlwind of fraternity life. Rushing a frat was a blur of parties, pranks, and bonding, but the final test of our pledge class was something else entirely. A midnight trip to an abandoned hospital a few towns over. It was a tradition, a rite of passage whispered about in the frat house, equal parts thrill and terror. The hospital, shuttered since the 1980s, was a hulking relic, its once sterile halls now a playground for urban explorers and ghost stories. Our pledge class, 10 of us, a mix of nervous and cocky, piled into cars, my friend Joshua and I riding with a couple of others, our excitement tempered by the unknown. We parked in a lot adjacent to a sprawling park, the hospital hidden beyond a patch of dense woods. The night was crisp, the air sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth. I'd worn my white Air Force Ones, a decision I'd regret as we trudged through the underbrush, my shoes catching on roots and mud. The hospital emerged like a specter, its towering facade dark against the starry sky. Broken windows gaped like wounds, and the surrounding trees seemed to lean inward, guarding its secrets. It was eerie, a place where time had stopped, and the weight of its abandonment pressed against us. One of the older pledges, James, knew the way in. A smashed window on the lower level, its frame jagged but accessible. We climbed through one by one, dropping into a sub-basement where the air was damp and the floor slick with water. My shoes squelched, and I cursed under my breath, earning a chuckle from Joshua. The group moved as a unit, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing peeling paint and rusted pipes. The hospital was a maze, its corridors stretching endlessly, the echoes of our footsteps bouncing off the walls. James claimed it was rarely explored, its location obscured by the park and the security patrolling the main lot. We climbed to the first floor, then the second, the group's bravado masking our unease. The halls were surprisingly clean, free of the graffiti that marred most abandoned buildings. Some rooms looked frozen in time, their beds and equipment untouched, while others bore signs of trespassers, scattered papers, spray-painted tags. The group began to splinter, smaller clusters breaking off to explore. Joshua and I, sticking together, veered down a side corridor, drawn to a room with an intact hospital bed, its metal frame glinting in our flashlight beams. We were poking around, joking about ghost stories, when a shadow passed the doorway, a fleeting glimpse of movement, dark and human-shaped. We froze, our laughter dying. "Yo, who's that?" Joshua whispered, his voice tight. I stepped into the hall, my flashlight sweeping the corridor. At the far end, a figure stood, motionless, its back to us. I couldn't tell if it was facing the wall or staring at me, but its presence was wrong, like a tear in reality. "Who is that?" I called, my voice echoing. The figure moved, slipping into a nearby room, and my stomach dropped. Joshua joined me, his face pale. "We should find the others," I said, my voice barely steady. We retraced our steps, the hospital's silence now oppressive, every creak and drip amplified. We heard the faint chatter of our pledge brothers ahead, a lifeline in the dark. Then it came, a scream, raw and blood-curdling. A woman's voice that seemed to claw at the walls. It came from the direction we just left, a sound so visceral it conjured images of violence, of murder. The chatter of our group stopped, swallowed by the scream's intensity. Panic took over. We ran, our footsteps pounding, the scream echoing in our ears. The group converged, a chaotic mass of fear, and we sprinted for the sub-basement. I ended up at the back, my heart racing as we climbed through the window. The screaming had stopped, but now we heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, not ours, descending the stairs. "Go! Go!" someone yelled, and we scrambled, Joshua ahead of me, my fear spiking as I imagined hands grabbing my ankles. We burst through the woods, branches snapping, and didn't stop until we reached the cars. Gasping, I told the group about the figure in the corridor, how the scream had come from that direction. No one had answers, only wide eyes and shaking heads. We peeled out, the hospital shrinking in the rear view, but its shadow lingered. I quit urban exploration after that. The memory of that scream and that figure etched into my mind. The hospital is still there, a silent witness to whatever we disturbed, and I'm certain it wasn't empty that night, not by a long shot.